So we have expected points, and average number of points a team is expected to score on a drive given a specific game situation. So what we have here is we have hundreds of different game situations that could possibly have occurred in NFL history. And by NFL history, I mean typically the past 10 years of NFL true data. And what happens is we take all of those game states or game situations and we say which of those resulted in a TD, which of those resulted in an INT, which of those resulted in a turnover or some turnover, and we assign a point value to that. So TD 6 if it's a field goal 3. We take the expected value. What's the average number of points a team is expected to score on that, given that certain situation? So if it's, for example, 4th and 1 on the 35, maybe 60% of the time it yields 6 points TD, 30% of the time field goal, and then 10% of the time it's an INT, which may result in a -3 the other direction. We take the expected value of that weighted by the probabilities of those. So that is expected points. We allocate points to each each outcome, and then we do the weighted average by the probability or the number of times that the outcome, which is the point, actually occurred. And now what is EPA, which is expected points added? It is expected points of after the play minus expected points before the play. Before the play. So how much value is contributed by a single play? So for example, if this single play is, let's say, a 20 yard run, what we do is we take what was the expected points before the 20 yard run, and what is the expected points after this 20 yard run, right? Most likely it's going to increase. Most likely it's going to increase, but how much? We get that through this difference. Expected points before could have been plus 0.3, and now after it could have been now plus 2.4. So this expected points added, or this EPA, is a measure of the value of a particular play, and that's the difference between the expected points before and after. Now we also have expected EPA, which is the weighted average of the EPA across all possible outcomes. So here we just said 20-yard run, right, is a single play. Now, for example, if you're doing for example, if you're in a 3rd and 5 situation, you're in a 3rd and 5 situation. Historically, if we look at all 3rd and 5 situations at some yard line, then we may have a 20-yard run. Occasionally, we may have a 21-yard run. We may have a 10-yard pass. We may have a sack. Right? And each of these is assigned an EPA. Each of these is assigned an EPA. An EPA for a 20-yard run, probably 0.3. It increases by 0.3. And for a sack, maybe it decreases by 0.5. And we take the weighted average of those EPAs by the number of times that outcome has occurred, and that is our weighted average. That is our expected EPA. And our optimal action is whatever action that we take that maximizes the EPA before the play even happens, given the current game state. So that is our expected points, EPA, and then we also have expected EPA. So EPA is for a single play. A single play occurs. What is the EPA for that single play? Expected EPA is we can have multiple plays that could occur from this game state. So it's prior to the play even occurring. Prior to the play even occurring, we have these combinations of outcomes that could happen, and we take the weighted average of those outcomes and the EPAs by the probabilities, by the frequency of the occurrences of those EPA. That gives our expected EPA. And now we'll go through. Now, what is the problem? Problem is that we know that these play calls diverge from decisions that maximize expected points. So we know that decisions that maximize expected points are something like the probability of success, let's say, is 0.4, probability of failure is 0.6, and we have a specific EPA associated with, if it is a success, that we may get +5. If it is a fail may get -3, and we take the weighted average of that. That is our expected points. But now we're saying that these play calls they diverge from these decisions that maximize expected points. And so there are these measurable decision inefficiencies. And why is this important? Is because if we have suboptimal play calls, these add up over the course of a quarter, which add up over the course of a game, which are incredibly pivotal if you're in close game situations. And these games are incredibly hard to even get to if it's a late season playoff game or playoff contention type game. And so these even .4 win is actually very important because there are only 17 games in a season, and each additional win adds so much franchise and revenue value. So that is why suboptimal play calls is a problem and that needs to be quantified further. And the problem of elaboration is that the quantified evidence is limited to just fourth down situations. There's a lot of existing research out there that says that teams should have gone for it on fourth down compared to punting or even attempting the field goal. But why coaches don't go for it is due to risk aversion. If they were purely maximizing expected points, they would have gone for it on fourth down a lot more often than they did not. Than they do not. But because they are risk averse and they don't want to to have the notion of failure. Even though in terms of expected value, it might be the correct decision, if the probability of failure is significantly higher than that of success, even if the EV is the same across both similar identical game situations, and coaches will probably choose the less riskier option. And so these decision inefficiencies they accumulate across plays, game states, game situation. They reduce overall offensive efficiency. And that's why total performance impact is left incompletely measured. And because it's not completely measured, coaches don't realize the value that these inefficiencies have during the course of a game. They don't know that we're not maximizing points here, and that because it's not measured, there's no way to communicate that to them. And so we propose that a decision evaluation framework is essential and necessary to quantify how this play calling relative to expected points maximizing decisions. Why it's essential to quantify it. We know there's a lot of studies on fourth down and research experiments on fourth down, but can we create a decision framework for not just fourth down, but all play calls? And so the product is going to be a framework consisting of an optimal action model. So this is going to be an agent or a model that learns what the optimal action in a given game state situation is. We're going to have a model that predicts what the coach will actually call in that situation. So what the coach is likely to do. And then the difference between those will be our efficiency metric to identify how efficient that play call actually was. And PAs will use this framework during post-game season analysis to assess and improve offensive performance because currently they don't have a clear systematic framework for assessing the efficiency of all plays. It is only expected points. Like we can do this expected points calc. Oh, they should have gone for it, or they should have done a field goal, or that was a risky decision. And we have these one-off situations where we do this expected value calc, but there's no systematic framework in place where we can evaluate all plays. And that's the novelty here, is we're creating a framework to evaluate all plays. And how are we doing this? We're creating a model to learn what the optimal call should be in that situation, what the coach is likely to do, what the coach is actually likely to do. So it's a systematic framework for quantifying the inefficiency of all plays. That's the new contribution here. And typically, gradient boosted trees have been used, classification regression, common SVMs, logistic regression have been used here. And our hypotheses, or our research question, is how accurately first can we model the coach behavior? What will this help us answer? This will help us answer how how predictable is the coach behavior? Help us model what the coach tendencies are. Is there some reason that the coach is going for this particular play, even though it might not be the maximal play that maximizes expected points? Is there a reason that the coach is going for that? Maybe it's a certain game state situation, certain team tendencies that is not captured in this expected value calc. So that this research question will help us better answer that. Second is, what is the average decision inefficiencies between play optimal and actual play calls? So this will be creating this metric and then aggregating that over across all seasons, all coaches, all teams, and calculating an average. And now, how does this efficiency metric now then vary across teams and game situations? We know that if teams were the same amount inefficient or efficient across all situations, then that would have already been known by now. But we know that there's some variation in the sense that coaches in the fourth quarter may be more risk averse than coaches in the first quarter or in even end of half versus beginning of game or end of game versus beginning of game. So we know that there is variation and fluctuation within even the game itself that would be reflected in this inefficiency metric. So how does it vary across teams? And obviously it should vary across teams. Coaches are more aggressive, more risk averse than other coaches. And now what is the relationship between play calling efficiency and offensive performance? It could be possible that sometimes efficiency may not correlate with offensive performance because there may be some factors that we're not taking into account when we're trying to model this efficiency. So we may know some things, the coach may know some things that the actual model does not know about player tendencies, about what has happened in the previous plays that the model does not account for. So is there some so if trying to extract what is the relationship between play calling efficiency and offensive performance, because in an ideal world, if it's an efficient coach and efficient play call, they should be winning a lot more and they should be producing a lot of offensive points. But if there's some deviation between that, we have some explainability factors there. And so what are our hypotheses? We know that expected NFL play calling produces significantly lower EP than optimal play selections. And we know this. We know this through, or we have an initial introduction of why this is true through the papers, through the existing research that has already been out there. Our second is that this play calling decisions can be predicted from pre-snap game state variables with statistically significant classification performance. So we know that coaches are predictable and their play calls over time can be predicted based upon their own tendencies. And coaches are not just going to randomly have significant variation. Their play calls are dependent upon game situations and team tendencies and what they have already done throughout the course of the season. So we can model coach behavior. Hypothesis 3 is that there is divergence between that coach behavior and the optimal play call. And that is associated with lower offensive performance. And now, how do we know that it's associated with lower offensive performance? Well, that's the hypothesis, and we'll do some significance testing on that. We'll get the inefficiency score, do a regression with that with some offensive metric, EPA per play, points per drive, even yards per game, or even wins, even across all seasons, and see if there is some statistically significant correlation there that says that, okay, if efficiency is high, then we know in an ideal world, then the offensive production should also be high. So if it's not, what are some other variables that we are not taking into account that could explain that deviation? And now we'll go through some prescription drug pipeline. So we have brand patent protection. This is the time where drug manufacturer receive patent protection. So no other manufacturer can actually produce this drug, and this manufacturer can charge higher prices. Now we have specialty drugs, expensive use for complex diseases, biologics made from living organisms rather than traditional compound. We have direct to consumer advertising. So consumer sees a particular drug being advertised, they may want that. We have CS offsets aging population, increased awareness and testing for disease, personalized medicine as well. We'll go to GH101. So we have basic group term life, groups up, dependent group life, group ADD. We have theoretical considerations for experience rating credibility. Now, incurred claims, so we know we have paid claims plus the change in the reserve amount throughout the year. And that change in the reserve amount is what we set aside to pay the projected claims that we know are still have yet to be paid due to some lag. Maybe it's like a delay in reporting or some we know that the claims will have some completion factor over time, that they're not fully completed yet, but in the future they will be completed. So we have this change in reserve, a reserve that we're allocating for when those claims will be completed. And so we have to account for that when we are calculating our total incurred claims. Now we have prospective and retrospective. Prospective is where we're looking at the past geography claim experience and we're projecting what the future claim experience could look like. Retrospective is in terms of the premium pricing. We're still using that. But what we're saying is we're going to have this baseline premium. We're going to have this baseline premium, and then at the end of the year, we'll see how the actual experience comes in, and then do the adjustments after we see how the actual experience has flowed through. So we're looking back when we're doing retrospective rating and then making the adjustments to the premiums for the next year, depending on if it exceeded expectations or not. We have special funding arrangements. We know we have fully insured reserve list plans, minimum premium contracts, self-insured level funding. So where the ER pays a fixed payment, fixed payment, and there is also some stop loss coverage also involved here. And fully insured, right? That is again the claim payments are made by the insurer. We have reserve lists, so we're not going to set aside any reserves here, but if they are necessary, then the ER would have to pay. ACA regulations, so gender rating, health status is not allowed. Geography or area tobacco use, age usage are allowable rating factors. And here we also have certain classes of benefits must be covered. We know that plans can't profit as much from this, so we must have some min loss ratio, some min AV. Principles of underwriting, having some limited spread in the benefits, because if there's choice A versus choice B, and there's just one is just completely more rich than the other, then that's going to cause a spike in the proportionality of the members going to one over the other. And let's see, we have COB, so coordination of benefits. So this is who's the primary versus the secondary payer. We have COBRA, continuation coverage usually is the secondary. And we have admin options for COB, and then COB methods. And again, allowable is different from what the actual claim is. So allowable is whatever is eligible for reimbursement, right? Whatever is eligible for reimbursement. So A versus B could have different allowable amounts, even though the actual claim is the same, right? Let's see, and then so yeah, group sub. Group sub is only the only disability provision in group sub is waiver of premium. Also, there's suicide exclusion in group sub. And we retrospective, we know prior balance, and then things to add, premium investment earnings incurred, claims charge, take the paid claims, increase in the reserves as we mentioned, and then minus the pool, because what is pooling? Pooling is we have this threshold of claims, and what the insurer is going to do is, okay, we have this threshold, and so these claims that we have, and instead of actually paying these because they could be catastrophic, we're going to take these and then we're going to allocate these to all of the other groups, and that is going to be their pooled premiums. And so we're going to use those pooled premiums additionally, and they're going to be evenly spread out through these groups. And we're going to use those to then help facilitate the pooled claims, which are above this certain threshold. CHDP more help consumer directed, consumer financial responsible, higher to deduct, lower premium, low util as well, because healthy EEs choose these ones more often because they know they're not going to use it as much. It's more cost conscious, and factors influencing E choice, information not being available about certain options, ER actions plus attitudes, plan provision, provider networks. Let's see what else. Need for health risk adjustments, mainly to ensure that the insurers compete on efficiency and quality rather than trying to get the healthier individuals. So that's why you want to have these health risk factors, is to make those appropriate adjustments. And you want to do, let's see, you want to do the whenever you're calculating for instance retrospective reserve, you want to make sure that you want to try to classify what is the expense versus what is actually coming through. So like, what are they receiving as the premium investment earnings, and then incurred claims is what they're paying out, right? So that's sort of part of the expense. Risk charge is thus if the PH leaves in a loss position, they leave in a loss position, they suddenly have this large claim, and then they suddenly switch to a new plan. That could be a loss position, so there must be some risk charge associated with that. And we'll stop there.